What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Underdog podcast, episode 6, NFC North preview. We're just trying to get them done, trying to get them all done. I don't know if I'll get them all done today, but I'll get them done by tomorrow for sure. So, we get into this one with, it could arguably be the worst team in football this year, the Detroit Lions. Shout out to Johnny Stack and Josh Sutton for cheering for an absolute shitty team. But they had the big trade, Stafford for Goff, and they gave up a bunch of picks, they got a bunch of picks as well from the Los Angeles Rams to help in this rebuild. But Jared Goff, I think it really came down with the Rams is they didn't think he was good enough to win a Super Bowl again with them. They got there with him once, and they just didn't think he was good enough to get back. But I think, honestly, outside of Ragnow and Decker and maybe Sewell, and Hawkinson, I think Goff's the best player on this offense. So he's going to have to make plays for them to at least compete in games. So we'll see how he is. I think he's getting kind of blasted for not being an elite quarterback, but I think, the Rams management too was part of that. I think paying Todd Gurley, paying Brandon Cooks, I think paying a lot of guys that really didn't deserve the money, kind of got them in cap purgatory. And they also paid Jared Goff a contract he should have never gotten. So, and then they hang on to David Blau, who's been sticking around this roster for a while out of Purdue. And then you go to the running backs. I think DeAndre Swift is primed for a huge season without much else behind him. And the lack of playmakers there, I think DeAndre Swift's going to be heavily involved in the running and passing game. I think they're going to use him a lot out of the backfield because they really don't have anybody on the outside that's super exciting. And then they bring in Jamal Williams over from Green Bay as more of a power-style back. Nice change of pace to Swift, who's the opposite. He's very quick, elusive. Jamal Williams is going to bring that power to this Lions rushing attack. And then Jamar Jefferson behind him is literally a carbon copy of Jamal Williams with slightly better receiving skills, in my opinion. Then they hang on to Godwin Igwebuike as well. Looking at the receivers, the wide receiver one, being Tyrell Williams is not ideal. He hasn't been able to stay healthy the last couple of years. He hasn't really been a quality wide receiver since his days at the Chargers. He's like a wide receiver 4 on a championship team right now, so that's not ideal. Then I think you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who you drafted in the 3rd round out of USC as a solid option, but everybody calling him like the steal of the draft. He wasn't. I think he's physical for a smaller guy, which is going to help. Over the middle when he works over the middle, getting those balls. But I don't think they should have huge expectations on Amon-Ra St. Brown in year 1, especially with Jared Goff at quarterback and not much else around him. You bring in Khalif Raymond as the nice deep threat from Tennessee, but he's not really much else other than that. I mean, you can scheme up touches for him, but that's about it. And then one of my guys here in Quintez Cephas, who I think should see a larger role after his rookie year in Wisconsin. I think he's probably going to be their starting slot. I mean, he should be their starting slot. It's Detroit. I mean, you never know, but I really liked his route running, and he has a combination of some good speed and great route running that I think will translate to the NFL and will help this team out. Then they have Kaderil Hodge, who's a former Brown, and they also have Trinity Benson and Tom Kennedy, a couple other guys. Then you get to the tight end, T.J. Hawkinson, primed for a huge season after having a really good season last year after struggling in his rookie year. I think Hawkinson's a 100 catch, 1,000-yard candidate guy, 10 touchdowns probably, with being their best receiver and probably outside of Ragnow, their best player on offense. Hawkinson's primed for a huge year. Also going to really help in that run game. He's one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, and with Dan Campbell, a head coach who's the tight end guru, I think he's going to go to another level. And Darren Fells, just a solid veteran, had a nice season last year in Houston. They also have Hunter Bryant, who's a nice vertical threat tight end, more of like a wide receiver hybrid. I think he's on the pup right now, though. And then you get to this offensive line, which is better than a lot of people think it is. You got Taylor Decker, nice veteran from Ohio State, above average starter. Jonah Jackson, who, in my opinion, has a lot of promise out of Ohio State, third-round pick. I really liked his tape coming out of Ohio State, and he looked really nice last season as well. Frank Ragnow, arguably the best center in the NFL. Their one weakness, I think, is Hal Vaitai right now at right guard, but he slides into guard where he's better. He's a pounder in the run game, and he is a terrible pass blocker. Tyrell Crosby could take that over when he comes back from IR, but we'll see. And then, of course, they got Penei Sewell, which was great that he fell all the way to number 8 where they were sitting, and they just took him best player in the draft, in my opinion, outside of Kyle Pitts. And then Logan Stenberg is a nice backup guard there. Great power, and he's a good puller there. And then they also have Matt Nelson, who's a decent swing tackle. And then going to the defense, they switched it up to a 3-4. Along with bringing in Jared Goff, you bring in Michael Brockers from the Rams. Very high-end run defender, high-motor player, nice veteran leadership, and provides a little bit of a pass rush. Aleem McNeil, who they drafted from North Carolina State, is going to plug up the middle. His job is just going to be to just take about 3 or 4 offensive linemen and hold them in place so that the linebackers can get there. Decent pickup. They definitely needed somebody to fill that role. And then they have Nick Williams, veteran run stopper here, former 7th-round pick from Stanford. I expect him to lose that job eventually to Levi Onwuzurike, who has super high upside coming out of Washington. Powerful player and really has a nice arsenal of power moves and is a decent run stopper as well. Deshaun Hand's another notable player, currently on IR, but he is a very high-end run stopper and offers some interior pass rush as well. And then on the edge, you have Trey Flowers, former New England Patriot. Just has really nice technique, and nice power off the edge. Had a really down year last year, though, with just 2 sacks. So hopefully he can bounce back. He's a trade candidate, I would presume, with the rebuild. And then they signed Romeo Okwara to that nice deal, solidifying him. He had a nice season last year with 10 sacks leading the team. He has a nice set of speed to power moves. And then they have Austin Bryant, who's, kind of a converted interior guy to the edge. I don't really like him playing as that 3-4 outside linebacker. I think he should be more of that 3-4 defensive end. I think that fits him better, as he's a good run defender, and has, some okay power moves, but I don't really see him out on the edge. And then they have former first-round bust Charles Harris in here, as some decent pass rush depth, and they also have Julian Okwara. And then in the middle, they have Jamie Collins, who was phenomenal for them last year. Probably going to hit some regression as he's getting up there in age, but he can really do it all. He can blitz, he can cover, and he's a great sideline-to-sideline player. And then they bring in Alex Anzalone as more of that cover linebacker. Wasn't really a fan of him coming out of Tennessee, and he really sucked last year in New Orleans. He's trying to, reestablish himself and try and get another contract. I like Jalen Reeves-Maybin, who I think is almost better than Alex Anzalone in that role, as that cover linebacker. Who's kind of a hybrid safety. And then they get Derek Barnes, who's more of like Jamie Collins, and has a nice set of blitz moves off the edge. So you'll definitely see him this season, and he's a player that needs a lot of development, but I think in the future can take over for Jamie Collins. And then Sean Dion Hamilton, who's currently on IR, one of my favorite players, great run defender, just really hits gaps hard and makes plays. I'm excited to see what he can do when he gets back. And then in the secondary, you have Jeff Okudah, who you took at 3rd overall in 2020. I thought it was, I thought they should have, they couldn't find a trade partner to trade down. They really did need a corner, but it was, it's overvalue for a corner. I mean, if you're taking a top 5 corner, it's got to be like Jalen Ramsey or somebody like that. But Jeff Okudah, nonetheless, I think will bounce back this year. He dealt with injuries, and, every, I think, defender last year struggled, getting adjusted to the system. And then one of my favorite players on this team is Amani Oruwari. I think he's primed for a big year. Had a nice, solid season last year for Detroit, and I think he's ready to step up into that cornerback 2 role. He drafted Defetu Melifonwu, who I liked. He's just a little stiff in coverage, but he's probably going to step up and be that slot right away. Then they got a couple backups in A.J. Parker, Jerry Jacobs, and Bobby Price. And then there's safeties. I'm a huge fan of Tracy Walker. I think he's a very underrated player and is going to be one of the better players on this defense for Detroit. And then you have Will Harris, who's a former, I think, 2nd-round pick that hasn't really lived up to the billing. I think if they can find a way to utilize him more in the box, I think that's more to his strength than he can succeed. They also have Dean Marlowe and C.J. Moore, who I am a fan of, has some nice speed and is a good special teamer there. Going to Detroit's schedule, it is rough, man. It is really, really rough. I don't see them winning more than like 2 or 3 games. The games I would pick them to win is maybe like Cincinnati at home, Philly at home, and I don't know, maybe Minnesota, Arizona, somebody like that. They just don't have the talent on offense really to compete. I think their defense is going to be top half this season, but I don't think that it's going to propel them, much past like 2 or 3 wins. Moving on to my next team, my 3rd place team is going to be the Chicago Bears. There's a lot of optimism. They finally got a quarterback that they want in Justin Fields. And I like their pieces on offense, except for maybe their offensive line. They made some questionable decisions there, like letting Charles Leno go. And then this team has been carried by its defense the last couple of years. But they are lacking at some positions in the back end there. But we start with Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle. A lot of people are mad that Andy Dalton's starting week 1, but I think Andy Dalton is a lot better than people give him credit for. He was solid in Dallas last year and actually was the best quarterback in 2 minute. So that helps. Obviously, he also had a star-studded cast there, but his offensive line wasn't great. They were banged up. I've always been a fan of Dalton. I thought he just got a lot of crap for things out of his control, really, in my opinion. I've always been a fan of Andy Dalton, and I think that he's going to prove some people wrong this year in Chicago. Then, obviously, you got the prodigy Justin Fields. Was tied for my QB3 with Trey Lance, but I think he needed to sit a year, honestly. I think this is the right decision by the Bears. His processing is a little iffy, in my opinion. He's kind of sticking to his first read a little bit too long. He does have a nice, he has good arm strength. I think his accuracy needs work, though. Not saying it's bad, just, the windows are going to be tighter, and there are some times where I feel like he throws the ball too high or too far in front or too far behind. Just, he needs to get adjusted to the speed of the game, I think. And then you got Nick Foles there. Honestly, I think you should just trade Nick Foles because I don't see a scenario where he starts this year at all. So I think if you can trade Nick Foles for a conditional draft pick, I think that's a win, in my opinion, for you. And then we go to this running back room. David Montgomery, one of my favorite running backs in the NFL this year. Primed for another big year, had a 1,000-yard season last year. was probably, outside of Allen Robinson, the best player on the Bears offense. I just think there's some points in time where it's questionable. Matt Nagy's play calling, where I think they should give it to Montgomery a little bit more, but also their offensive line has really struggled to block for him. So we'll see how that goes. He's also a very underrated catcher of the football. They bring in Damian Williams, who loses his job to Clyde Edwards-Helaire after opting out. Nice change of pace back, a little bit quicker than Montgomery. Montgomery's more of that kind of enforcer, that power back. So Damian Williams is a nice change of pace. And then Khalil Herbert, who's kind of your home run threat, and a great receiver out of the backfield coming from Virginia Tech. Thought that was a great pick. And then obviously they still have Tariq Cohen, who I think Khalil Herbert's going to end up replacing. Cohen, I think, is coming back from an ACL. So, and then you get to these receivers. Allen Robinson might be the most underrated receiver in the NFL. What he's been able to do with Blake Bortles and Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles at quarterback is stupid. So if Justin Fields is even an average quarterback at best, look out, because Allen Robinson might legitimately be in that conversation with the DeAndre Hopkins and the Devontae Adams and the Tyreek Hills of the world. He is a legitimate number one receiver in this league. And then you got Darnell Mooney, who I expect to have a nice season. He had a great rookie campaign, and is one of the better route runners in the league. And for a smaller guy, can really be a difference maker out there. And he is a nice vertical weapon that they have, which is a lot of what these guys are here in Chicago. They bring in Marquise Goodwin, who's literally just, he was, a deep threat, but then kind of worked his way into becoming an all-around receiver at San Francisco, and then, got hurt, and then he opted out last year after signing in Philly, but he's coming back this year for Chicago, and should, be at least keeping defenses honest for that deep ball. That's kind of him and Brashad Perriman and Damiere Byrd. Damiere Byrd more so like Marquise Goodwin, more kind of an all-around receiver, was New England's number one target last year, and I didn't really expect much out of Damiere Byrd, to be honest, last season, and he exceeded my expectations. Wish the deep ball was more prominent with him, but then you bringing in Brashad Perriman, I think, is interesting, as he got cut in Detroit. Solid perimeter receiver, great speed, just has had drop issues in the past. We'll see how they utilize those three guys and who gets kind of the wide receiver 3 touches. And then at tight end, you have Cole Kmet, former second-round pick from Notre Dame. Solid possession chain mover guy, kind of like Hunter Henry, just a little bit less athletic. Nice blocker, was stuck behind Jimmy Graham last season, who they retain. So it's going to be interesting to see if he surpasses him, or they still give Jimmy Graham the tight end 1 reps. At this point, Jimmy Graham's been washed for the last couple of years. Nice red zone threat, though, as always, but just has been, hasn't been great the last couple of years. And then they bring in Jesse James, another veteran tight end, solid blocker, similar to Cole Kmet, just less of an athlete. And then they also have J.P. Holtz there. And then you go to this offensive line. They bring in the veteran Jason Peters after their second-round pick. Tevin Jenkins was hurt, which I thought was a steal in the second round. I thought he was a for sure first-round pick, just a big blow that he lands on IR to start the season. And then you have Cody Whitehair, who really they've gone back and forth between him at center and guard, and he struggled the last couple of years. Kind of picked it back up at the end of the season, though. Is a very athletic guard. He's one of the more athletic guards in the league. It's just he's very inconsistent there. And then they have Sam Mustipher as center, who is, young and is inexperienced. Is probably one of the worst starting centers in the league. So definitely a weakness there. And then you have James Daniels, who was highly regarded out of Iowa and just has not lived up to the billing of being a first-round pick. For whatever reason, man, he has struggled in the NFL for sure. So hopefully they can get something out of him. And then they have Jermaine Ifedi, kind of a journeyman tackle guard. He's played both. He's a great Jermaine Ifedi's a great run blocker. It's just he doesn't really offer you much in the pass blocking game. He really struggles there, in my opinion. And then they also have a nice swing tackle in Elijah Wilkinson, who may or may not, get reps there. He's kind of the opposite. He's a great pass blocker, better pass blocker, but he's just a pitiful run blocker. They also have Alex Bars, who's a nice interior backup for them as well. And then we get to this defense, which is why I think, if Chicago were to make a playoff spot, it would be because of their defense. Starting the interior, you have Akeem Hicks, who, more recently has been slowed down due to injuries, but he is, as good as they come out there. Great, elite run defender. And then, adds value as a pass rusher as well. Eddie Goldman on the inside, super athletic nose tackle. At 6'3", 320, he can move very well. And he doesn't offer you much as a pass rusher, but he's great in there in the trenches. And then you have Bilal Nichols, 5th round pick back in 2018, who actually showed some upside as a pass rusher last season with 5 sacks. So he's already a very good run defender. So if you can get that pass rush out of him, Bilal Nichols looks to be a valuable piece in the future. And then they also have Curious Tonga, who they drafted out of BYU, who's just similar to Eddie Goldman, but just bigger. Nose tackle type, just going to plug up those run gaps. And then Mario Edwards Jr., who's a nice interior rotation piece as well, former second-round pick. Doesn't offer you much as a run defender, but is a great interior pass rusher. Then you get to the edge rushers. Robert Quinn was pitiful last season. Week 2, he had a nice game against the Giants with that forced fumble, and then just didn't do anything else after that. He really struggled last season after having a really good year with Dallas kind of career revitalizing. And then you have Khalil Mack, who in my opinion is the best edge rusher in the league. He didn't have the sack numbers last season, but he is just, oh my God. Khalil Mack is elite. His power moves are just ridiculous. I mean, the clip of him sacking Brady, just putting Tristan Wirfs on his ass is just incredible, man. Khalil Mack, his bull rush is one of the best in the league. And they don't really have much out there. Mario Edwards can slide out there to play edge, but they don't have much else out there for edge depth. And then the interior linebackers, you have Roquan Smith, who I thought was as elite of a linebacker prospect as you can get coming out of Georgia. His first season, he struggled, and then after that, he kind of got adjusted to the system and really started playing elite. And I think Roquan is going to be an all-pro this year. His range is just incredible, sideline to sideline. He's still working, to be a better cover player, but his range sideline to sideline is, there's not many guys that can beat his range. And then you have Alec Ogletree, veteran of the Giants and the Rams. I think I'm not a fan of Ogletree at this point in his career. He's honestly terrible. Wouldn't be surprised if Christian Jones or Joel Iegbuni passes him because Alec Ogletree is awful. Joel's a decent, he's been on special teams, but I think he has some upside there. And Christian Jones has played a lot in this league. He's in his 8th season, so he might be able to pass Alec Ogletree. And then you get to the secondary, which took a hit. They let go of Kyle Fuller, which for cap reasons I think was why they did that. But Jalen Johnson steps into a cornerback 1 role, and I've been a fan of him. I thought he should have been a first-round pick out of Utah. Long, lengthy press corner, great in man coverage. I think is going to take another step up this year. And then they got Artie Burns coming over from Pittsburgh. He tore his ACL last year, but Artie Burns was highly regarded out of Miami. He just has dealt with injuries. If he could stay on the field, I think he could be a solid, split reps in the nickel and then on the outside. And Kindle Vilder, 5th round pick last year, he has super long speed. It's just we don't know much about him as a player. He didn't really play a ton in college, and then hasn't played a ton in the NFL. So they're looking for him to step up. And then they also have Duke Shelley, who's a nice depth piece there for the nickel. And then at safety, Eddie Jackson kind of took a down year last year after that big 2019 with all those picks. I think Eddie Jackson's a player where if he's in the right place at the right time, he's going to make a lot of plays. He definitely capitalizes on those opportunities. He just didn't get as many of them last year as he has in years past. And then Tashawn Gibson's a nice veteran, strong safety who can come up into the box and play some linebacker as well. Looking at Chicago's schedule, having been a playoff team last year, they're gonna play some dogs, and I think their schedule is pretty tough. There's not a ton of breaks in there. There's this a part of the schedule where they get Green Bay at home, Tampa Bay on the road, San Francisco at home, Pittsburgh on the road, a bye week, and then they're home against Baltimore. So that's a really tough stretch in there. I think Chicago's probably like a 7 or 8 win team. I just think that their lack of good offensive linemen and their real almost lack of weapons at the receiver position is really going to I think stop this team from making the playoffs, in my opinion. And then we got our next team here. We got the Minnesota Vikings. I think took a step back last season. I think they'll be better this season. I like their offseason a lot, and they had a stellar draft. So it starts with Kirk Cousins, who I think underrated, had a really, really good season last year for them. And should he be on the contract? He is no, but, he threw for 4,200 yards and 35 touchdowns last year after they started horrendously and finished the season strong. So I think Kirk, if he, if he plays at that level, and he did last year, they have a potential to make the playoffs. And then they draft Kellen Mond, who's got a lot of work to do. He did not have a good camp either. Is definitely a very athletic quarterback. It's just, whether or not he can, process the game, at the NFL level. And then they have Nate Stanley, who's on IR, former Iowa quarterback. And then you got Dalvin Cook, who I think, in my opinion, is probably the best pure runner of the football. He can run inside, outside. He can also catch the football. And Dalvin Cook really, he put the Vikings on his back last year along with Justin Jefferson. I mean, I'm a big fan of Dalvin Cook. He's, he had that one, ever since his injury, the torn ACL in his rookie season, he's been an absolute monster out there. And then Alexander Mattison, one of the better running backs in the league. Nice change of pace back, a little bit more elusive than Dalvin Cook. And, has, nice change of pace back when he gets in there. And when Dalvin's been hurt, Madison's been good. He averaged 4.5 yards a carry last season, so he is efficient when he gets in there in his touches and, makes it work. And then the Iowa State running back, baby, Kene Nwangwu. Too bad he's on IR right now, but he's a great return man. Was like the best returner in college football last year. How he went in the 4th round, I have no idea, but he's got some speed to him, home run threat, and a nice scat back there. We'll see how he does when he comes back. And then we get into the receivers, starting off with Justin Jefferson. Absolutely exploded last season, and I think is primed for an even bigger year this year. He just, after, that Tennessee game, just took off and absolutely just exploded, was 4th in the NFL in receiving yards. I mean, this dude is the truth, and has the potential to, that next couple of years take that step up to that elite wide receiver, and he can play outside, inside. He's a great route runner. Separates really well and has great hands. All the tools you need to be a great receiver. Then Adam Thielen, who I think is slept on a little bit, has the record for most games. Started off with 100 yards. I think he had 8 in a row. Was hurt last season a little bit, but still, put up those numbers with 14 touchdowns. I think Adam Thielen's going to be back. If he stays healthy, I think he's going to have another, 1,000-yard season and, double-digit touchdowns. I think he's super productive and is very physical. I think more physical than people give him credit for. Kind of reminds me of Mike Evans. When he's, running down the field, he tracks the ball just as good as Mike Evans and, fights for those tough catches like Mike Evans. And then they bring in D.D. Westbrook, who's another guy that struggled to stay healthy, but I think has real upside playing in the slot. And I think, I was high on D.D. Westbrook coming out of Oklahoma. It just hasn't clicked for him yet, and didn't click for him in Jacksonville, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy. They also have KJ Osborne there, who they drafted last year out of the U to fill in that slot role, so they'll be fighting for them. Osborne, he's slower. He's a slower receiver, but is a fine route runner. I think just he lacks some of that athleticism that D.D. Westbrook does. And then they have Amir Smith-Marset, who they took in the 5th round out of Iowa. I thought was a little bit overrated, but people were saying it was like third rounder. I thought he went where he should have. He provides them with some nice speed, and he's a decent return man as well. So, we'll see how they incorporate him. And a couple guys on IR. Olabisi Johnson, I thought he was going to be, prime for a big season. He had a nice year last year before he got hurt. And then, too bad he goes down with an ACL in camp. Blake Prohl, who's also on IR right now, I really like him. I actually liked him better than Amir Smith-Marset. He had all the tools to be like an elite slot receiver. Just too bad he's there, and also Chad Beebe on IR as well. And then you go to the tight ends. Tyler Conklin going to be starting for the Vikings this season. He's a 5th round pick a couple years back. So he has an opportunity there to show out. Along with they got Chris Herndon over from the Jets, who I've been a big fan of. He's just been suspended and injured. Can't stay on the field, but I'm excited for the opportunity that Chris Herndon has here. And then obviously, Irv Smith Jr. going down. He was probably my biggest breakout candidate. But he went down with a knee injury. And then they have a relevant fullback in C.J. Ham, who's one of the best in the league. A great blocker out there. And then we go to this offensive line, which is much improved. Left tackle, you got Christian Darrisaw. Steal the draft, in my opinion, at 22 or 23. They traded back and still got him, which was ridiculous. Really like Christian Darrisaw. He's in probably the second best pass blocking tackle in this draft besides Rashawn Slater. And he showed all the tools to really be an elite tackle one day. His kick step is just stupid for a college prospect. And then behind him you have Rashad Hill, who's a nice veteran swing tackle. You have Ezra Cleveland, who's going to be playing guard. Figured they would put him at tackle, but with them getting Darrisaw and them having Brian O'Neill, you can really afford to slide him in there. And Ezra Cleveland is super athletic. They're going to be, they love their power, so he's going to be used nicely in those pulls. And then Garrett Bradbury, who struggled his rookie year and then kind of turned it up last year, has a lot of upside, and another very athletic center similar to Jason Kelsey. And then right now I think it's going to be Udoa at right guard, but I think behind him Wyatt Davis, if he gets in there and steps in at guard, I have no idea why he fell to the 3rd round out of Ohio State. I think he has immense upside. He's a little bit more powerful than Ezra Cleveland and Garrett Bradbury are more agile. I think if he slides in there. He has immense upside. I thought he was like borderline first rounder coming out of Ohio State. And then you get Brian O'Neill, who just got his big payday. Great run blocker. Struggles a little bit in the pass blocking game, but well-deserved. One of the more underrated tackles in this league. And then you go to this defense, Mike Zimmer's specialty. In the middle, you have Dalvin Tomlinson, who's a great run defender coming over from the New York Giants. Fits nicely with Michael Pierce. He's a little bit more athletic than Pierce. Doesn't really offer much as a pass rusher, and Pierce is kind of your more typical nose tackle, but Dalvin Tomlinson's very athletic run defender, and gets in the backfield often. And Michael Pierce is going to be your gap plugger, taking up blocks. And then they have Sheldon Richardson, who's going to substitute in on pass rushing downs. That's his specialty, and he's an okay run defender, but that's kind of his specialty, being a pass rusher. They also took Jalen Twyman in the 6th round out of Pittsburgh. Was high on him. I think he's on the non-football injury reserve because he got shot like 6 times in the chest, but he survived, thank God. I liked him coming out of Pittsburgh, and they also have Armand Watts there. And then on the edge, they have Danielle Hunter, who's pissed off that he got screwed with his contract. He wants a new contract, and he got hurt last season. I think he has Defensive Player of the Year expectations after not playing at all last season. He's a dark horse to win it. Obviously, I'm always going to vote for Aaron Donald, but Danielle Hunter has a real shot at that. And then they have DJ Wonnum, 4th round pick last year. They're looking for him to step up into a more prominent role this season. They bring back Stephen Weatherly as a nice veteran presence. And I think they cut Everson Griffin. So they don't have much other than Stephen Weatherly for depth. And then getting into these linebackers, you have Nick Vigil. I'm not really a big fan of him. He's just kind of whatever out there. I think Chaz Surratt will eventually take his place, as Chaz Surratt's more athletic and I think just a better player right now. Then you have Eric Kendricks, who's probably, besides Fred Warner, the best cover linebacker in the league. Instead of covering grass, he covers players in zone coverage. He does that very well. He's just an elite cover linebacker, and doesn't get enough respect by the players or by the media, in my opinion. And then Anthony Barr, who's kind of your hybrid edge rusher / linebacker. He's always making plays out there. Super athletic dude. Great run defender. Struggles a little bit in coverage, but Anthony Barr has been doing it for forever now. And then they have Troy Dye as well, who's going to mix in on those passing downs, as he's a great cover linebacker coming out of Oregon. And then this secondary, kind of an interesting secondary. You bring over Patrick Peterson from Arizona, who's a great veteran corner, multiple time All-Pro in this league, who kind of had a down year last year. But Zimmer loves his man cover corners, and Peterson's one of them. Brings in Bashad Breeland, which was an excellent pickup. He had an excellent season last year from Kansas City, who I was surprised let him go. So that was a nice pickup. And then they bring back Mackenzie Alexander to play in the slot, which was a solid pickup. I think eventually, Dantzler's going to take that spot, but Mackenzie Alexander's a nice veteran to have there. And then I'm a big fan of Cameron Dantzler, as he was a 3rd round pick out of Mississippi State last year and played a lot in his rookie season due to the injuries they had. And he can play inside or outside, so I'm excited to see how they use Dantzler. And then they also have Chris Boyd and Harrison Hand. And then, a nice safety duo here in Xavier Woods coming over from Dallas. He's a veteran safety, a little bit above average. I wouldn't say he's stellar, but, he can get the job done. And then Harrison Smith, one of the smartest players in the NFL. Surprised he got a 4-year deal. That's kind of a big risk for Minnesota to take, because he's like 32, 33? He's getting up there in age. He's 32, but Harrison Smith's been elite for forever, man. And, slight decline, of course, but Harrison Smith has been an insane player. And then looking at their schedule, I think Minnesota's probably around the 9, 10, 11 win range. Really going to depend on health, and if, they can get other pressure besides Danielle Hunter and if they can stay healthy on offense for sure, and if that offensive line lives up to their potential. But we'll see how they fare. And then moving on to our number one team in this division, certain Super Bowl contender in the Green Bay Packers, who have their front office has made some dumbass decisions. Frankly, paying Aaron Jones was stupid, and then not drafting a receiver for Rodgers ever has been stupid. But nonetheless, this team is really set up to, make a run in the Super Bowl. Potentially, they have a better roster than the Kansas City Chiefs. I think their defense is a lot better than Kansas City, and their offense is about equal. So I think, they have, just as good, if not better, of a roster than Kansas City. And we start with Aaron Rodgers, who might be the most talented player to ever play the quarterback position. I mean, he can make every single throw. He can, he's best when the play breaks down and he's rolling out to his right and just launching bombs. Aaron Rodgers is truly an amazing player at the quarterback position. And then Jordan Love, who was tearing it up in camp and preseason, he looked really good. So whether or not Rodgers is back here next season, I think they're going to be okay with Jordan Love. Obviously, they're going to take a step back because I don't think Jordan Love is on the level of Aaron Rodgers. But Jordan Love was my QB3 in that draft class. I had him better than Justin Herbert, and I had him better than Tua. So, if that's anything to say about him, I was higher on Jordan Love too. I thought he was a big, strong arm, and reminded me a lot of like Carson Palmer, kind of prime Carson Palmer, just a little bit more athletic. And then at running back, you have Aaron Jones, who I can't believe they paid over Corey Linsley. Aaron Jones is a weapon, though. He's nice in the receiving game, and a solid runner of the football. I just think that money could have been spent elsewhere. But Aaron Jones is a borderline top 10 running back in this league. And then you have A.J. Dillon, who's the complete opposite of Aaron Jones, just absolute bruiser. Going to be a nice change of pace, and I think he'll see more work this season with Jamal Williams gone. And then you have Kylan Hill, which was a nice pick in the 7th round. Honestly, I think Kylan Hill and A.J. Dillon together could have matched the production of Aaron Jones, but Kylan Hill is a nice, speed, home run threat, great receiving back as well. So I don't know how much work he'll get this season, but, look out for Kylan Hill. And then we get to these receivers. Devontae Adams, in my opinion, right now is the best receiver in football. His route running is stupid. You can't get his hands on him. You saw even against the best corner in the game, Jalen Ramsey, he made him look stupid in the playoff game. And then you have MVS, who's a legitimate breakout candidate. I think the problem with MVS is just, he just needs to, look in the football and catch the football. I think that's part of his problem is, he just sometimes gets in his own head. But when he's on, MVS can be a solid receiver too when he's on. Truly. It's just his catching of the football is just, it's 50-50 whether he catches it in triple coverage or it's 50-50 whether he catches it when he's wide open. So that's the biggest problem with MVS. Then Allen Lazard, who I'm a big fan of, was undrafted coming out of Iowa State, which I thought was ridiculous. I thought he was like a 4th round player. He showed up last year for Green Bay at times. I think he faded a little bit down the stretch, but when other guys weren't producing, he was. I really like Allen Lazard. He's kind of sometimes he reminds me of Allen Robinson. His profile is very similar, and they're both very physical at the point of attack. And then your slot, they bring back Randall Cobb, who was, who had some great years here in Green Bay. Obviously, he's a little bit past his prime, but I think Randall Cobb provides some veteran leadership, and it's going to be a go-to target for Rodgers in those, 3rd down situations. And then you got Amari Rodgers, who's most likely going to be Cobb's successor. Finally, they made a smart draft pick after I thought their draft was poor. But Amari Rodgers, I thought, was one of their best picks in the draft. He's a solid slot receiver, good route runner, nice hands. Just I don't know how much upside he truly has. He's more of a high floor player. And then you get to the tight ends. Robert Tonyan was a nice breakout last season. He's on the last year of his deal, so he's trying to earn a contract there in Green Bay. So we'll see if he does do that. He was a red zone monster last year. And then they have the veteran Mercedes Lewis, who's still kicking it. It was the only first-round draft pick that has caught a touchdown pass from Rodgers. He's also a great blocker, too, so he's going to be used a lot in the run game. Josiah DeGuara, who they took in the third round, I thought was stupid. I mean, he's probably more served well as a fullback than an actual tight end. I just don't really like him at all. He's slow, can't really get the job done at all. And this O-line, it's kind of taking a step back. David Bakhtiari is going to start on the PUP, which sucks, because David Bakhtiari is probably right there with Trent Williams for the best tackle in football. He's a better pass blocker than Trent Williams, just not as good as a run blocker. But Elton Jenkins is going to slide out there right now. Truly one of the more underrated guys. He's been great ever since he came into the league out of Mississippi State. Well above average starter, probably going to kick out to tackle, and then they're going to have Lucas Patrick come in at guard, who's a veteran, slightly below average in my opinion at starter. I feel like they could go with John Runyon, 6th-round pick out of Michigan, who I was high on, is a bulldozer in that run game. Just, his pass protection is a little questionable. And then Josh Myers, who I thought was a really bad pick. In the second round, Creed Humphrey was sitting on the board and they didn't take him. I just think he's never going to be the athlete that Creed Humphrey is, and he's never going to, he's got a decent floor, but his ceiling is not as high as Creed Humphrey. And I thought Creed Humphrey was a better player coming into the NFL than Josh Myers. And then they took Royce Newman, who I just thought was another bad pick. I didn't really see the upside in him at all. I feel like, we'll see if it's him or John Runyon out there, but I feel like it should be John Runyon, who's got the higher upside and is a better player right now. And then Billy Turner, who's a solid starter out of right tackle. He's average, jack of all trades guard or tackle. And then they brought in Dennis Kelly, who's a decent swing tackle and a veteran in this league as well. Then we get to this defense, which I think is better than people give them credit for. Starting on the inside, Kenny Clark, absolute animal out there. Great pass rusher, and I think he's underrated in that regard as a pass rusher. He was great in the playoffs with 2.5 sacks after not producing that well in the regular season. But he's also a elite run defender in his own right. And then Dean Lowry's a veteran in this league from Northwestern, solid run defender, and has is an okay pass rusher, so he provides some versatility there. And then Kingsley Keke, former 5th-round pick from Texas A&M, brings you more upside as a pass rusher, and is a solid run defender too. He's very similar to Dean Lowry in that regard. They don't have much there for depth. And then you get on the edge. Zadarius Smith is a high-end pass rusher. He just has great ability to transfer his speed to power very well, and ever since he's been at Green Bay has been dominant along the edge. And then Preston Smith, who kind of took a step back last season, wasn't as productive. I think eventually he gets passed up by Rashawn Gary, who I think is going to end up being a better player than Preston Smith ever was, and he has the ability, like Zadarius Smith, to transfer speed to power as well. And then they also have Jonathan Garvin and Chauncey Rivers out there. And then on the inside, they had a nice find with an undrafted rookie, Chris Barnes, who I really like. He's solid. Solid on the run, but really good and really underrated in coverage. I think that was his best area last year. And then they bring in veteran Devondre Campbell, former Cardinal and Falcon, whose kind of specialty is coverage. He's not a great run defender, which is why they have guys like Ty Summers who's probably going to see more time on the rundowns than Devondre Campbell. He can do it, but that's not really his forte. Then they also have Oren Burks, who's kind of, a mix of both. He can do both coverage and play against the run. So, and they also have Isaiah McDuffie there. And then getting into the corners, you start with Jair Alexander, who I think is the second best corner behind Jalen Ramsey. He just doesn't have the interceptions total, but he is truly a lockdown corner out on the edge. He doesn't ever get beat, and he truly is a special player out there. I remember a lot of people thought Josh Jackson should have been in the first round over Jair, but Jair has proven that he is well deserving of that pick. And then they fucking brought Kevin King back. Kevin King does not deserve to be a cornerback 4, let alone a cornerback 2. He is just awful, man. He just gets toasted. He is just so shit in coverage. Oh my god, Kevin King is just fucking awful, man. He is absolutely pitiful to watch out there. And then they drafted Eric Stokes, who I thought was a project player and didn't really deserve the first round billing. I think he has good upside, but he's not really going to help them in year 1 and maybe not year 2. He's got a long way to go in his development. And I like Chandon Sullivan, who's probably going to be their nickel. He's quick. He can stay with those quick receivers and is a nice man cover corner. Really stepped up last season for the Packers, and I thought was certainly better than Kevin King. They also bring in Isaac Yiadom, who has experience with Denver and New York. He's more of a zone guy, but can certainly play man-to-man coverage. Going to be interesting to see how they use him. And then they have a nice safety tandem in Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos, who can both. Darnell is rangier and really plays nicely in single high as well, along with two high. And then Amos can come down into the box. But he is one of the better cover strong safeties in the league and has nice range as well. Those two could play either strong or free safety. And then they have Henry Black and Vernon Scott back there behind them. Going to the Packers' schedule, I think they're probably like a 12 to 14 win team. It's the Packers, man, and Aaron Rodgers is more motivated than ever to go out there and kick some ass. I've just been the people that say Rodgers is like the GOAT. I'm like, well, okay, let's slow down here. But truly, I think I appreciated Aaron Rodgers coming out there in his press conference and just calling out Green Bay for all the dumb moves they've made in the past. I thought it was, well timed, and he should have said that because they really have been, really shafting him. By cutting guys, not offering veteran players, contracts that they should have gotten or earned, or at least, talk to them about, hey, we want you back, but, with our cap situation, could you take, a hometown discount? And then also their draft decisions in the past, not just with the Jordan Love, just not getting him any weapons. That's just kind of been, my problem with Green Bay's front office. But hopefully they can make some changes. Green Bay's kind of always been about how they are, and they haven't really spent money in free agency as well. So hopefully they can change. I don't know where Rodgers is going to play next season. That remains to be seen. That's going to be an interesting storyline as well. But that's all I have for this one. So, we're going to do NFC South next. I'm probably going to do that after the game. I'm going to take a break and just get ready for this game between Tampa Bay and Dallas. Really excited for this to happen. You don't know how excited I've been. I've been excited since the draft for football season, man, and it's finally back. But thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for checking out the content. Love all the support. And stay tuned for more from the Underdog podcast. But I'll catch you guys later. Peace.